The night air outside Grand Meridian Hotel shimmered with Lagos lights, laughter, perfume, and the hum of money. Inside one hall, a group of final-year design students celebrated their class party. At the corner of the room, Chiamaka Okafor, 26, stood with a glass of malt, quiet and withdrawn. Her classmates wore imported dresses and loud confidence. They called her Miss Holy because she avoided gossip and parties, but Chiamaka didn't mind. What they didn't know was that her rent was overdue. Her mother's calls went unanswered because she couldn't send money, and her dreams of finishing design school were fading behind fatigue. In another wing of the same hotel, a charity gala was underway. Powerful men and women gathered under chandeliers, glasses raised, the language of wealth floating in the air. Among them was Edward Cole, a 33-year-old billionaire architect, tall, reserved, and magnetic. He disliked these events but came out of respect for a business partner. Tonight, however, he was a target. A jealous rival spiked a drink meant to humiliate another man, but fate redirected the glass to Edward's hand. Moments later, he felt dizzy, his chest tight, the room spinning softly. He excused himself and left the gala, walking toward the quiet corridors. At the same moment, Chiamaka stepped out of her noisy hall to breathe. The marble floor glistened under soft gold lights. She walked aimlessly, clutching her small purse like a shield from the world. Then she saw him, a man stumbling forward, his hand pressed to the wall. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked, rushing to steady him. His breath was shallow, his voice low. I don't feel well." She guided him toward a nearby guest room after convincing a hotel staff member it was an emergency. Inside, the air was still, warm. Chiamaka poured him water, held it to his lips. "Just breathe slowly," she said softly, the calm in her voice cutting through the tension. Edward looked at her, her eyes sincere, her presence grounding. "You're kind," he murmured. She smiled faintly. "Just rest. You'll be fine." But fate had already taken its first breath between them. In the stillness of that room, two worlds collided, one of quiet struggle, the other of lonely power. Outside, the rain began to fall, thin and soft, tapping gently against the window like destiny, whispering the start of something neither of them could yet understand. Dawn broke over Victoria Island, washing the Grand Meridian Hotel in pale gold. Inside the quiet room, Edward Cole stirred awake. For a moment, he felt peace, the kind of silence that only follows an unexpected connection. But when he turned, the bed beside him was empty. The pillow still held the faint scent of citrus and innocence. On the nightstand lay a silver wristwatch, its glass scratched at the edge, its hands frozen at 2:17 a.m. He sat up slowly, confusion blending with an ache he didn't understand. "Who are you?" he whispered into the quiet room. He searched the corridor, questioned the staff, but there was no record of her name. She had left like a dream dissolving in daylight. He slipped the watch into his pocket and left the hotel with one truth, that he would never forget her. 5 years passed. In a modest apartment in Surulere, Chiamaka Okafor awoke before dawn. Her children, 5-year-old twins, Sean and Nina, slept beside her, their small breaths rhythmic and innocent. She brushed their hair, tied Nina's ribbons, and fried eggs in a pan that hissed louder than her thoughts. "Mommy, where's my medal?" Sean asked eagerly. "In your pocket," she said, smiling faintly. Nina waved a crayon drawing of 4 figures holding hands. "That's you, me, Sean, and a tall man," she said. Chiamaka's hand paused midair. What tall man? Just someone who makes a safe, Nina replied with childlike certainty. Every morning, Chiamaka dressed with quiet precision, pastel blouses, black skirts, and worn shoes. She worked at Aurum Designs Limited, a luxury architecture firm in Lekki, where she blended into the background of creativity and ambition. No one there knew her story. They only saw her focus, her silence, her excellence. That same morning, across town in a penthouse office in Banana Island, Edward stood by the glass wall, turning that same silver watch between his fingers. It still didn't tick. The scratch at the edge was like an unhealed wound. He'd built empires, signed million-dollar deals, but couldn't erase the memory of the woman who disappeared. Chiamaka, meanwhile, fought her own quiet battles. Her fiancé, Michael Adewale, promised her security, but demanded silence, no mention of her twins, no presence of them in his world. They'll ruin our image, he often said. Each time something in her spirit cracked, but she stitched it together with hope. Every night, when the twins slept, she opened her sketchbook and drew gardens, rivers, and benches where tired souls could rest. Sometimes, without realizing it, she drew a man standing nearby, holding a broken watch that never stopped glinting. Two lives, one bound by memory, the other by survival, continued to move like parallel rivers under the same Lego sky, unaware that destiny had already begun to bend their paths toward each other once again. The news spread through Aurum Designs Limited like perfume. On a hot afternoon, Edward Cole was returning to Nigeria. The billionaire architect, known for his precision and calm authority, would now oversee the firm's new flagship project, the Riverside Gardens. Designers whispered at their desks, makeup bags appeared from drawers, and laughter filled corners that were usually silent. They say he's more handsome now, one colleague teased. If I see him, I'll faint. But in the far corner of the open-plan office, Chiamaka Okafor stayed focused, her face lit by the soft glow of her monitor. Her desk was small, her drawings clean, her presence quiet, like a candle that refused to flicker, no matter the noise around it. She didn't join the excitement. To her, rich men were distant stars, bright, unreachable, and burning from too close a look. All she cared about was finishing her work, getting home early enough to read to Sean and Nina, and ensuring she never gave anyone a reason to question her place at Aurum. When Edward arrived that morning, the entire floor froze. His tall frame filled the glass doorway, tailored suit catching the light, confidence carried with quiet ease. His eyes were kind but distant, the look of a man searching for something invisible. He moved between desks, shaking hands, smiling faintly. Then he paused near Chiamaka's workstation. Her focus was unwavering, pencil moving smoothly across tracing paper, headphones in, soft instrumental music humming. She didn't even notice him at first. "Beautiful work," he said quietly. She looked up, startled, removing her earbud. Their eyes met just for a second. Something flickered. He tilted his head slightly, a faint crease in his brow, as if chasing a half-remembered dream. "Thank you, sir," she replied, lowering her gaze quickly. He nodded and moved on, but his steps slowed. Her voice, her eyes, something about her felt achingly familiar. He couldn't place it, but the feeling lingered long after he left her corner. Back in his glass-walled office upstairs, Edward opened the drawer where he kept the silver watch. He turned it over, thumb brushing the tiny scratch, still not ticking. He stared through the window, his reflection fading into the Lagos skyline. "Who are you?" He whispered again the same words he had spoken 5 years ago. Downstairs, Chiamaka glanced at her children's drawing tucked into her bag. 4 people holding hands. For reasons she couldn't explain, her heart raced. Neither of them knew that destiny had just placed them under the same roof again, and this time it would not let them walk away unnoticed. That Friday evening, the Pearl Banquet Hall in Echo Hotel Suites sparkled like a scene from a fairy tale. Chandeliers glowed above polished marble floors, violins played softly, and Lagos's elite mingled in whispers of perfume and pride. Michael Adewale stood tall in a navy tuxedo, his arm resting on the back of a velvet chair. Beside him, Chiamaka Okafor looked stunning in a pale rose gown, elegant yet simple, the way she always preferred. But beneath her calm smile, her chest tightened. Earlier that week, Michael had warned her coldly, "Don't bring the children. I don't want pity to ruin our night." She had nodded in silence then, but deep inside a storm brewed. Her children were not baggage, they were her heartbeat. When she entered the hall with Sean and Nina holding her hands, Michael's face stiffened like stone. The chatter around them dipped, then rose in murmurs. "Who brings children to an engagement dinner?" someone whispered. Michael grabbed her elbow, smiling at the crowd while his voice dripped venom. "What did I tell you?" "They're not a mistake," she said, quietly, eyes wet but steady. "They're mine." His smile faltered. "Not mine," he said aloud, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. The sentence dropped like a slap. The crowd froze. A woman in sequins let out a quiet gasp. The band played softer. Chiamaka's knees trembled, but she didn't cry. Something inside her, the same strength that carried her through hunger and humiliation, rose like a tide. "Then I won't stay where my children are shamed," she said. She turned to leave, holding her twins close, but Michael's hand shot out. "You're not walking out on me," he hissed. With a snap of his fingers, 2 security men stepped forward. "Stop her!" In that moment, fear gripped her heart, but only for a second. She lifted her chin and whispered to her children, "Hold Mommy's hand, don't let go." They ran through tables, startled faces, and bursts of camera flashes toward the lobby. Her heels clattered across marble floors, heartbeat syncing with the sound of her children's breath. Outside, she stumbled into a line of black cars pulling up. One door opened, and a tall man stepped out, adjusting his cufflinks. The world seemed to slow. Edward Cole looked up just as Chiamaka and her twins ran into view, her eyes wide with panic, her children clinging to her sides, and 2 men chasing close behind. He raised a hand. "Security?" His voice was calm but commanding. Within seconds, guards appeared, blocking the men's path. "This is a hotel, not a hunting ground," Edward said coolly. The men froze. The crowd fell silent. Chiamaka looked up at the stranger, who had just become her shield, and her past collided with her present in one suspended heartbeat. The lights reflected softly on his face, the same familiar warmth that had once steadied her in a hotel room 5 years ago. He didn't recognize her yet, but she knew. She had found the man who had once held her when the world was spinning, and this time he had arrived when everything else was falling apart. The drizzle had grown into a soft rain as Chiamaka Okafor stood frozen under the glowing hotel awning. Her heart thundered. Her hands trembled around her children's small fingers. The 2 men who had chased her were now being held back by uniformed guards, and the man who had commanded them to stop, tall, calm, in a tailored charcoal suit, turned toward her. Edward Cole. For a moment the world muted, no rain, no crowd, only the rhythm of her breath and the echo of a memory she had buried 5 years ago. His eyes met hers, and something unspoken passed between them. Familiarity without recognition, safety without reason. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with quiet concern. Chiamaka swallowed. "Yes, thank you," she replied, clutching her twins close. Edward's gaze fell on Sean and Nina, their damp clothes sticking to their tiny frames. "Do you need a car or a safe room for the night?" "No," she said, shaking her head quickly. "We'll be fine. I just need to get them away from here." He nodded, stepping aside so she could pass. But as she walked toward the hotel gates, Nina turned and looked up at him. Her big, curious eyes lingered on his wrist. "Mommy," she whispered, "that man's watch looks like yours." Chiamaka froze. Slowly, she turned back. There, glinting under the yellow streetlight, was the silver wristwatch scratched at the edge, frozen in time. The world seemed to sway. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She couldn't speak. Edward noticed the shock in her face. "Are you sure you're safe?" he asked again. His tone was softer now, almost familiar. "I am," she stammered. "Thank you, sir." He wanted to ask more, but something about her trembling lips and protective posture stopped him. "Then go. I'll make sure no one follows you," he said firmly. She nodded, turned, and led her children into the night. But destiny was not done. Minutes later, inside the hotel, Edward's aide, Austin, approached him with concern. "Sir, the man who caused the scene, Michael Adewale, he's furious. He's gone to file a report, claiming the woman kidnapped her own children." Edward's jaw tightened. Kidnapped. He glanced toward the glass doors where she had disappeared. Those children clung to her like she was their home. "Yes, sir," Austin replied quietly. "But if he files first, it could cause her trouble." Edward didn't hesitate. "Tell security to call me if she returns, and Austin, keep the car ready." 15 minutes later, the front desk called. She had come back. When Edward stepped into the lobby, he saw her again, soaked, exhausted, and brave. She stood with her twins wrapped in a shawl, her back straight despite the fear in her eyes. I needed to collect something I forgot," she said softly to the receptionist. Edward approached gently. "I'm glad you're safe," he said. She turned, startled, their eyes locked once more, the silence between them heavy with destiny. "Thank you for earlier," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Edward replied. "You might need help again tonight." It was then that the world began to weave their lives together again, not through grand gestures, but through quiet protection, unexpected kindness, and a single heartbeat that refused to be forgotten. The lobby of Grand Meridian Hotel had quieted, the storm outside reduced to a silver drizzle. A few guests lingered with their umbrellas, but Chiamaka Okafor stood by the wall, her shawl clutched tightly around Sean and Nina. Their faces were tired, their eyes heavy from fear. Edward Cole approached slowly, his voice low and steady. "You look like someone who's had a long day." She hesitated, her pride fighting with exhaustion. "I just want to go home, sir." "I understand," he said gently. "But your fiancé, the man from earlier, he's causing trouble. He's filing a report that you kidnapped your own children." Her breath caught. "He can't. He wouldn't." Her voice trailed off, but she already knew Michael would. He was cruel in the way of men who needed control. Edward nodded to Austin, his aide, who stepped forward with a calm authority. "Mr. Adewale's already at the precinct. If he files first, ma'am, they'll summon you and the children. Chiamaka's heart sank. Please, she whispered. I don't want them frightened. I don't want the police near my babies. Edward studied her quietly. He didn't see scandal or deceit. He saw a woman who had been cornered too many times and had learned to stand with grace even while trembling inside. Let me help you, he said finally. She looked at him, confused. Help me how? We can speak to someone trustworthy, Edward explained. Our legal advisor is nearby Barrister Tunde Aide. He's handled delicate situations before. Within minutes, Austin led them to a quiet private lounge. The twins curled up on a sofa while Edward spoke softly to Mr. Aide, a gentleman with silver-framed glasses and a calm, fatherly air. After listening carefully, Barrister Aide folded his hands. Madam, what this man intends could cause you real distress. A false kidnapping claim will take time to resolve. The strongest immediate protection you can have legally and socially is clarity of guardianship. Chiamaka frowned. Clarity of guardianship? Yes, the lawyer continued. If you and a trusted adult become a legal family unit, even temporarily, it prevents anyone from challenging your right to keep your children. She blinked, uncertain. You mean marriage? Barrister Aide nodded gently. A registry marriage tonight would make you and the children untouchable in court. We can dissolve it later if you wish. Chiamaka's throat tightened. Marriage? She echoed, barely believing the word. Then Edward's voice came, soft but sure. If it keeps you and your children safe, I'll stand in. Her head snapped up. You? Yes, he said simply. No expectations, no demands. Just protection for tonight and for as long as you need it. Tears gathered in her eyes. Why would you do that for me? Edward's gaze shifted toward the twins. Because I can't watch bullies win. And because they looked at me like they already knew me. For the first time in years, Chiamaka felt something strange, not love, not relief, but safety. The kind she hadn't known since the night her life changed 5 years ago. She turned to the twins. Nina, half asleep, had slipped her small hand into Edward's coat pocket, resting there like it belonged. Chiamaka closed her eyes, breathing shakily. When she opened them, her voice trembled but steady. All right, we'll sign. Edward nodded once, his expression unreadable, but his heart heavy with something he didn't yet understand. That night, under the flickering lights of the Ikeya registry office, 2 signatures would bind a promise. Neither of them planned a promise that fate had written long before they ever knew each other's names. The walls of the Grand Meridian Hotel seemed to hum with tension. In the private lounge near the lobby, Chiamaka Okafor sat with Edward Cole, her twins curled up beside her on the sofa. Barrister Tunde Aide arranged the legal forms with quiet precision, while Austin stood near the door, ensuring no one entered without permission. It was late. The rain had turned to a misty drizzle, the kind Lagos night where the world felt like it was holding its breath. Once you both sign, Barrister Aide explained gently, this will grant you immediate protection. No one can claim custody over the children or file a kidnapping case against you. Chiamaka nodded slowly, her fingers trembling as she brushed a strand of hair from her face. I just don't want them hurt, she whispered. They won't be, Edward said softly, not while I'm here. She looked at him, her eyes searching. There was sincerity in his tone, the same warmth she remembered from a night long ago, though neither of them had yet connected the memory to this moment. Just as Barrister Aide began preparing the final signatures, The lounge doors burst open. Michael Attawale stormed in, his face flushed with anger, two men trailing behind him. "There you are!" he spat. "You think you can run from me, embarrass me in front of half of Lagos society?" Chiamaka rose instinctively, stepping in front of her children. "Michael, please don't do this here." "Don't do this," he sneered. "You made me a joke. You show up to my event with your baggage. Why, enough." Edward's calm voice cut through the room like a blade. Michael turned, startled by the tone. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who doesn't tolerate men who terrorize women and call children baggage," Edward said evenly. He didn't raise his voice, yet the air seemed still around him. "Do you know who I am?" Michael scoffed. "I could ruin her life." "You already tried," Edward interrupted, "and you failed. You won't get another chance." He nodded slightly toward Austin, who motioned to the hotel security waiting outside. "Please escort Mr. Attawale and his companions out." Michael's eyes widened. "You can't order me around." "I can," Edward said calmly, "and I will. This woman is under my protection." For a moment, silence filled the room. Michael looked from Edward's composed face to Chiamaka's trembling form, then to the guards waiting by the door. His jaw tightened, but his courage faltered. He straightened his tie, masking humiliation with arrogance. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "Perhaps," Edward replied, "but not tonight." As the guards led Michael out, the tension in Chiamaka's shoulders broke. She exhaled shakily, holding Sean and Nina close. Edward knelt to the children's level, his tone soft now. "Are you both all right?" Sean nodded bravely. "Are you a good person?" he asked. Edward smiled faintly, the first real smile in years. "I'm trying to be." Nina looked up at him through sleepy eyes. "You feel safe," she murmured. Something in Edward's chest tightened. He reached out, gently brushing her small hand. "Thank you," he said quietly. Behind them, Barrister Aide cleared his throat. "Mr. Cole, Miss Okafor, shall we proceed?" Chiamaka looked at Edward, at this stranger, who had stepped into her chaos like a calm tide. She nodded. "Yes, let's end this night with peace." As they prepared to sign, the clock on the wall ticked softly, each second carrying the weight of fate, justice, and beginnings they didn't yet understand. Outside, the rain began again, not harshly, but gently, as though the heavens were washing away everything that had tried to break her. The rain followed them through the quiet streets of Ikeja, turning the city lights into soft blurs of gold and silver. Inside Edward Cole's sleek black sedan, silence filled the space between them. Chiamaka Okafor sat in the back seat, her twins asleep, with their heads resting against her arms. Every so often she glanced out the window, watching droplets slide down the glass, each one catching fragments of neon light, like memories she couldn't escape. Edward sat beside her, his expression unreadable. He looked at her reflection in the glass, wondering why her presence felt both new and achingly familiar. He had helped many people in his life, colleagues, employees, even strangers, but never had someone stirred the same sense of duty and peace. When they arrived at the Ikeja Civil Registry office, the night guard blinked in surprise at the sight of the billionaire architect and the weary mother. But Edward's tone was calm, final. "We're here for a private signing." Inside, the registry room smelled faintly of paper, old wood, and rain-soaked air. A flickering fluorescent bulb hummed above them. Barrister Aide and Austin stood as witnesses, quiet and respectful. The registrar adjusted his glasses and slid the documents forward. You understand the implications of this union? Yes, Edward said. His voice was steady, but his hand trembled slightly as he picked up the pen. Chiamaka hesitated. The pen felt heavy in her palm. She looked down at her sleeping children. Sean's hand curled protectively around Nina's wrist and took a deep breath. I understand, she said softly. Their signatures met on the page like parallel lines finally touching. No music played, no family watched, no flowers adorned the table, only the soft ticking of the registrar's old clock, echoing through the small hall like a heartbeat returning to life. When it was done, Barrister Aide folded the papers carefully. Congratulations, he said gently. You've just given your children safety. Chiamaka smiled faintly. That's all I ever wanted. Edward looked at her, then really looked. There was grace in her weariness, courage in her silence. He felt the weight of something unspoken pressing on his chest. He reached into his pocket unconsciously and touched the silver wristwatch, the same one frozen at 2:17 a.m. As his thumb brushed the glass, the watch gave a faint, soft tick, then another. He froze. For 5 years, the watch had been lifeless, its gears unmoving, its silence a reminder of a night that had never found closure. Now, it ticked again, faint but alive. Chiamaka noticed the glimmer on his wrist and felt her heart falter. That watch, that familiar scratch near the edge, she had left it behind that night at the Grand Meridian Hotel. Her lips parted slightly. That watch, she whispered, but her voice faded under the hum of the flickering light. Edward looked up confused, but she said nothing more. The moment passed like a held breath, suspended in destiny's quiet patience. Outside, the rain had stopped. The night air was still, carrying only the scent of wet earth and new beginnings. As they stepped out of the registry building, the children still asleep in their arms, Chiamaka glanced at the man beside her, the stranger who had unknowingly become her shield, her anchor, and the father her children had never met. She didn't know yet how to tell him the truth. He didn't know yet that the woman he had searched for 5 years now stood beside him. But heaven knew. And the watch kept ticking,